You were told to be kind, to help, to forgive, to give second chances, to never raise your voice, to always understand what they are going through. But no one asked what you were going through. This is where the problem begins. Carl Jung believed that every light casts a shadow, and the brighter the light, the darker the shadow it leaves behind. So when you become the good person, always saying yes, always showing up, always putting others before yourself, you may start to wonder, why does this feel so lonely? Why does kindness hurt? Why does being a good person feel like a trap? Let's break this open, because the dark side of being good is the part nobody talks about. They don't see the guilt you carry when you say no. They don't notice how drained you are when you show up to help. Again, they praise you for being so nice, such a sweetheart. But behind your smile is a scream, a whisper, a resentment that's been building for years. You weren't born this way. You were trained. Maybe it started in childhood. Maybe when you were angry, someone said, "Don't talk like that. Be nice." Maybe when you cried, they told you, "There's no reason to cry. Smile." Maybe when you set a boundary, they punished you. So you did what any child would do. You adapted. You learned to suppress the parts of you that were not lovable. And over time, the world rewarded you for becoming less of yourself, less angry, less opinionated, less selfish, less authentic. But in the shadows, your real self never died. It just learned to stay silent. This is the very shadow Carl Jung warned us about. He said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because accepting yourself means you have to confront this truth. You're not just kind. You're also angry. You're not just helpful. You're also resentful. You don't just love people. Sometimes you hate them too. But society only wants your light. It only wants your goodness, your service, your politeness. And so you split. You become two people. The one they see, calm, giving, gentle, and the one buried inside, tired, unseen, unappreciated. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, that shadow grows. Every time you forgive someone who didn't even say sorry, it deepens. Every time you bite your tongue, your soul bleeds a little more. And here's the twist. The more good you try to be, the more manipulative you become, without even realizing it. You start helping people just so they'll like you. You start saying yes because you're afraid of abandonment. You become so addicted to being liked that you forget what it means to be real. This is not virtue. This is self-betrayal. And Carl Jung warned us of this very danger, because when the shadow grows too strong, it erupts. You lash out unexpectedly. You feel bursts of rage you don't understand. You silently hope they'll feel guilty. You become passive-aggressive, cold, withdrawn. And worst of all, you start to hate yourself for even feeling that way. Because that's not what a good person does, right? But what if your shadow is not your enemy? What if it's trying to protect you, to show you the parts of you that are screaming for love, for space, for truth? Carl Jung believed that integrating the shadow is the only way to become whole, not by killing it, but by understanding it. Imagine if you were allowed to be both, kind and assertive, generous and honest, forgiving and boundaried. Imagine if being a good person didn't mean abandoning yourself. That's what shadow work is all about. Because the truth is, being a good person doesn't hurt you. Being a fake version of one does. Let's go deeper. There's something no one tells you about constantly being the nice one. You become everyone's safe place, but you never feel safe yourself. You become the emotional cushion for everyone else's mess. But your mess? It never gets cleaned. You show up for people during their worst moments, but when you're quietly falling apart, they don't even notice. It's not their fault. You trained them. You taught them that you don't need help. You taught them that you're fine even when you're not. You taught them that your time, your energy, your silence, and your emotional labor are always available. And now you feel invisible in a room full of people who love you. That's the dark side. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear in society, a role we play to feel accepted. And the more we identify with that mask, the more we forget who we really are beneath it. You became the good person because that mask gave you safety. But now, it's suffocating you. You smile when you're exhausted. You laugh at jokes that hurt you. You nod even when your mind is screaming, no. You stay when you want to leave. And one day, you'll look in the mirror and ask, who am I? When did being kind start feeling like being used? Carl Jung believed the journey to healing begins with a terrifying act. You must betray the role you were given. You must risk no longer being seen as good in order to finally be real. That means saying no when people expect yes. That means protecting your peace, even if it makes you look cold. That means finally telling the truth, even if your voice shakes. And it's terrifying. Because the moment you stop being overly agreeable, the world starts calling you selfish. When you stop sacrificing your needs, they call you rude. When you stop fixing everyone, they say you changed. And they're right. You did change. You stopped betraying yourself for their comfort. You stopped giving people the version of you that was always tired, always hurting, always afraid to lose love. Carl Jung said something powerful. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who they want, not who they molded, not who the world rewards, but the real, raw, beautifully complicated version of you. Who knows how to be kind and fierce, soft and strong, loving and unapologetically honest? Here's the truth. Most good people don't want to admit you're not actually kind because you're full of love. You're kind because you're full of fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being called difficult. But what if I told you that you can be good without being afraid? What if true goodness isn't about being soft and silent, but about being strong enough to hold your boundaries while still having a heart that chooses compassion freely, not forcefully? You see, when you don't do your shadow work, your kindness becomes your weapon against yourself. You give until you collapse. You love until you're empty. You help until you break. And when people finally leave or disappoint you, you blame yourself. I should have done more. But doing more was never the problem. The problem is, you never stopped to ask, is this mutual? Do they see me? Or just the version of me that serves them? Being a good person should not mean being invisible. You deserve love that doesn't come at the cost of your identity. You deserve respect that doesn't rely on your silence. You deserve rest. You deserve to be enough, even when you're not performing. And that begins when you stop using kindness as a mask and start using it as a conscious choice, not a compulsion. It's time to give your inner child what they never got: the permission to be angry, the space to say no, the voice to be messy, honest, and real. Because behind every overly nice adult is a child who learned that their truth was dangerous. Carl Jung would tell you this: the shadow is not bad. It's just what you haven't made peace with yet. So, what part of you still believes that being real will make people leave? What part of you believes that honesty will make you unlovable? What part of you fears that being too much will make you end up alone? That's your shadow speaking. And the only way out is through. You don't need to become less kind. You need to become more conscious in your kindness. You don't need to stop loving people. You need to stop forgetting yourself in the process, because the most dangerous good person is the one who has faced their shadow and still chooses to love. But this time, with power. But let's be honest. You've probably tried to change before, tried to say no, tried to set a boundary, tried to put yourself first. And what happened? People got uncomfortable. They guilt-tripped you. They asked what's wrong with you. They said, "You're not the same anymore." Of course you're not, because the old version of you was breaking. And that's what makes this transformation so hard. You don't just lose people. You lose the identity you worked so hard to build. The good girl, the reliable one, the strong one, the helper. Carl Jung warned us, if you wear a mask for too long, you forget you're even wearing one. And when you take it off, the light feels blinding. Because now you can see all the places you abandoned yourself. You said yes when you wanted to cry. You listened when no one listened back. You stayed silent to avoid conflict. You apologized just to keep the peace. And each time you did, a small part of your truth went into hiding, until one day you wake up and your life doesn't even feel like yours. It's theirs. Their needs, their schedule, their expectations, their chaos. And that's why most people never heal. Because healing requires the death of who you pretended to be before you can give birth to who you truly are. It's painful. It's lonely. It's terrifying. But it's real. And for the first time in your life, you stop asking, "Do they still like me?" and start asking, "Do I even like myself?" That question is the beginning of shadow work. Because when you face your suppressed anger, your hidden bitterness, your unmet needs, you realize your kindness wasn't pure. It was performative. You weren't giving freely. You were giving hoping they'd finally choose you. You weren't being strong. You were being scared of what would happen if you ever broke down. And that's okay. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you aware. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." You didn't end up in toxic relationships by accident. You were unconsciously seeking people who confirmed your belief that you have to earn love, that you must overgive to be worthy, that your feelings come second. But now, you're awake. And awareness is a one-way road. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you feel the anger, you can't bury it again. Once you hear your own inner voice, you can't keep silencing it. You begin to unlearn everything. You learn that boundaries aren't rude. They're necessary. You learn that saying, "I can't help right now," doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. You learn that people who only love you when you're useful never really loved you. And maybe, just maybe, you begin to realize you don't want to be known as the good one anymore. You want to be known as the true one. And sometimes being true means upsetting people, disappointing them, losing them. But it also means finding yourself, your real self, the one who feels safe in their own skin, the one who gives because they want to, not because they have to, the one who says no without shaking, the one who loves without disappearing. That's what Carl Jung meant when he said, "I'd rather be whole than good." Because goodness without wholeness is empty. But wholeness means becoming everything you are, even the parts they told you to hide, even the fire, even the rage, even the tears, especially the tears. Because the truth is, being good isn't about being perfect. It's about being authentic. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to stop rescuing everyone. You're allowed to stop performing for love. You're allowed to choose you. There's a moment, quiet and unremarkable. When everything shifts. Not with fireworks, not with applause, but with a silent decision that no one else hears. The decision to stop abandoning yourself. That's when it begins. You're still polite, but you no longer shrink. You still care, but you're no longer consumed. You still help, but only when your soul doesn't bleed for it. Because now you're choosing from overflow, not from desperation. This is the rise of your shadow, not as a threat, but as your guardian. Your shadow is the version of you that held all your no's, all your anger, all your exhaustion, all your silent breakdowns in bathrooms at 2 a.m. You thought she was scary, but she was just tired of being ignored. Carl Jung believed the shadow is not evil. It's neglected. And once you integrate it, you stop being controlled by your niceness. You stop over-explaining. Stop justifying your worth. Stop trying to be understood by people who never really saw you. You don't chase closure anymore because you've given it to yourself. You realize the apology you waited years for won't come. The people you helped the most won't thank you. The love you gave without limits won't always be returned. And still, you rise. Because now your self-worth is no longer a transaction. It's a truth. A truth built not on how many people approve of you, but on how deeply you approve of yourself. That's power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that no one can take away. Not your ex, not your family, not your friends who vanished when you changed, because now you finally understand. Being good without boundaries is just slow self-destruction. You didn't lose them. You outgrew them. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You didn't stop caring. You stopped carrying what wasn't yours. And yes, some people will call it selfish. Let them. Because when you've spent your whole life bleeding for others, even holding a bandage looks selfish to them. But Jung reminds us, the greatest act of love is to become who you truly are, even if it means letting others think you've changed. You have changed, and it's the most beautiful thing about you. So here's what you do now. You stop explaining yourself. You stop rescuing people who drown you. You stop apologizing for the space you take up. You breathe deeper. Walk slower. Speak less, but with more truth. And when someone asks you why you're distant, why you're not available like before, why you're suddenly so quiet, you smile gently and say, I finally started listening to myself. Because the old you, she was exhausted. She was kind, but hollow. Helpful, but invisible. This new version, she's real. She's radiant. She's rooted. And when the world tells you to go back to being soft, small, and sweet, you'll remember. It nearly killed you. Your kindness almost became your grave. So instead of running back, you'll run inward. You'll choose truth over tolerance, energy over exhaustion, self-love over silent suffering, you'll choose peace that doesn't come from pleasing everyone, but from pleasing your soul. And in that moment, you won't just be a good person. You'll be a whole one. And that changes everything. If this video made something inside you feel seen, it means you're not alone. But this journey is just beginning. If you're ready to reclaim your power, understand your shadow, and stop living for approval, like this video, share it with someone who needs it. Comment below, "I'm done shrinking." And most importantly, subscribe to Psychatic for more Carl Jung-based shadow psychology. Let this be the moment where you stop surviving and start becoming you.